Hello! In this video, I want to critique Jordan Peterson's take on Karl Marx. So he discusses this thesis that Karl Marx was in fact a Satanist and perhaps even inspired by Satan. Now, okay, I am definitely willing to admit that Karl Marx made many mistakes and in fact was wrong about many things. One of the best critiques of Marx actually comes from the anarchist movement, from Bakunin. So Bakunin kind of asked Marx, is this dictatorship of proletariat really supposed to abolish itself? Like, how does that work, man? That is a good critique of Marxism. There are many others, but saying that Marx is a Satanist, it just doesn't seem like a good critique to me. But okay, let's hear the guy and then I will respond.
More endorse. Marx had the devil's view of the world and the devil's malignity. Sometimes he seemed to know that he was accomplishing works of evil. I think that gets closer to it. Now, Pastor Richard Wurmbrand, who wrote the famous book Tortured for Christ, and was tortured for Christ in Romanian prisons by communist captors who were shouting, "I am the devil," while they were torturing him. He did a book called Marx and Satan. He's convinced that Marx was a Satanist and did some things ritualistically that it might have even been satanic. But I can't say that. I can't endorse that.
But you see evidence of that in his play.
I've never seen,
in terms of at least his fantasies.
That's right. That's right. In fact, Payne even goes so far as to say, Vladimir Lenin, right? There's a statement from Lenin which said, when I was a teen, I broke from all religion. I took the...
Okay, let me just shortly interject. So, one interesting thing that I did learn from Peterson's video is Marx, as a young man, did wrote this edgy play in which the main character is the devil, called Ulinen. Okay, that was interesting. I actually had no idea about it. Now, is that enough to show that Karl Marx is Satanist? I don't think so. And okay, one thing that I would actually really like to ask Jordan Peterson about, most people don't know it. Even I wouldn't have known about it hadn't I studied history and actually read a book by Archie Brown called Rise and Fall of Communism. So, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, among many other things, so they were inspired by the Jacobins in the French Revolution, Babeuf, some other weird thinkers. Among other things, they were inspired by Christian egalitarianism. Now, you might ask, what the hell is that? Well, that's the 14th century movement. It becomes popular in parts of Europe, like Thomas Müntzer, the guy directly inspired Friedrich Engels, then John Ball, an English Christian preacher. So what did these guys claim? They claimed that feudalism is unnatural because we are all equal in the eyes of God. And they claimed that therefore, because we are all created in the image of God, and we are all one in the Holy Spirit, and stuff like that, that because of it, feudalism is unnatural and that the peasants need to rebel against the nobility and take the wealth that belongs to those at the top and redistribute that wealth among themselves and actually make everybody equal. That was what the Christian egalitarians believed. And what's kind of funny to me, they used the Bible to justify their beliefs, while Karl Marx, on the other hand, was an anti-theist. Now, it would have been interesting to imagine a scenario in which the communists actually used religious justification for what they did. And what's funny is they could have actually. There are definitely valid interpretations of the Bible that ask for more wealth redistribution and more equality, financial equality. But okay, there are two primary reasons for why all communist regimes pretty much were anti-theistic. On the one hand, Marx happened to be an anti-theist. That's just a coincidence. I would even say an unlucky coincidence. But on the other hand, the church was always allied with the monarchy, and communists were all about abolishing the monarchy. So yeah, and I do agree that, for example, Stalin's decision to close churches, many churches and Buddhist temples and mosques, well, it only helped Hitler in the end, because then there were many peasants that kind of disliked communism and decided to join the Wehrmacht, and the German military actually quite cunningly just said, okay, let's bring back the freedom of religion in our occupied areas. But of course, Hitler then ended up being ultra racist and did a lot of genocide, and then that kind of made him unpopular again with the Soviets. But okay, let's continue.
Cross from my neck and I threw it in the rubbish bin. And Paine has a quote where, not Paine, Richard Wurmbrand, where I think he believes that Lenin even stomped on it. He says, well, that's a satanic ritual. I don't know that it is or not. But there's another case of Lenin who at least did the work of the devil. I mean, Lenin had, according to Robert Conquest, W.H. Chamberlain, the first historian of the Russian Revolution, 500,000 people were killed from 1917 to 1923 under Lenin, not even including the Russian Civil War. If that's not the devil's work, I don't know what the hell is, right? But I think what Paine said in the latter quote, the devil's view of the world, the devil's malignity, and at the very least, this identification with kind of devilish-like destruction, right? Tearing everything down, rebelling against the world, everything that exists deserves to perish. That at least, and then the ideology that he created that just happened to be responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century, you know, more than World War I and World War II combined.
Well, okay, I'm not saying that killing a million people or millions of people is okay, but why is starting World War I not the work of the devil? We are talking about the war started by imperial capitalist countries. Why is that not work of the devil? I don't know. I mean, India, this idea that, you know, communism killed more than both world wars combined is ridiculous. It's just not accurate. Like, a lot of people that died in World War II are killed by communism in some way. For example, if we talk about Stalin's retaliationary killings of some nations, like Stalin deported a lot of Chechens in 1944, Balkars, Ingush tribes. So he believed in collective vengeance. He ended up deporting them to Siberia, for example. Then the Chinese Civil War. Well, it depends if we count it as a part of World War II. But yeah, so and just we can just look at numbers. So World War II, according to most historians, killed somewhere around 70 to 80 million people, and World War I, 20 million. Communism really didn't kill more than that. Like Mao, let's even say he killed around 40 million, and Stalin killed around 20 million. But yeah, okay, let's return to my previous point. My previous point being that actually, I strongly believe this actually. The communist regimes could have actually used Christianity in their propaganda. Like, had they been smarter, they could have said they are doing the work of the Lord in the same way in which the fascists did it. Now, obviously, what fascists were doing wasn't very Christian, but it still didn't prevent them from saying it is. You know, you have to utilize propaganda. You know, you have to be able to operate within the system your ideology emerges in, you know. And later Stalin even realized that, and he, for example, started ordering the Russian Orthodox Church to celebrate his birthday. And what's interesting here, I agree with Archie Brown, you know, this idea of racial equality. It exists in Christianity, definitely, and it exists in Islam. Islam, I would assume, took it from Christianity. And that idea was forgotten by the Western colonial powers. In fact, they even constructed false signs to claim that white people are superior. And then this radical Christian idea of racial equality emerges once again, but this time in communism. And what's even more absurd, communism, instead of becoming popular in the West, where it originated, it becomes popular in the East. So actually we had, like, politically speaking, the East proclaiming this very Western idea of racial equality through the prism of an ideology that was also actually Western. And yeah, that's the irony, you know. Without communist countries like Mao's China and the Soviet Union, I do think that colonialism probably would still exist. But okay, that doesn't justify what Mao and Stalin did to, you know, their own people and some surrounding countries like Finland and Vietnam, in the case of China. But okay, let's end the video here, and tell me if you agree with me in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.